Hey, it's your buddy Peace and Harmony with you here today. Zooming in on a very important topic that comes up in marriage relationships to a covert narcissist, and that is the experience of trauma bonding. Trauma bonding exists when there's, as Patrick Keynes describes, it's a misuse of fear, excitement, sexual feelings, and sexuality utilized to entangle another person. And Patrick Carnes really did a lot of study and research into the existence of a trauma bond, which essentially is a misuse by a covert narcissist to entangle and enmesh and control a person in their life. So, in essence, it's a using of all the very strong negative emotions and how they affect the physiology in the brain, the limbic system, the temporal lobes. Really, the limbic system, which is one of our older brains, and the temporal lobes, which then regulate our emotions, how they utilize really these sort of negative emotions to control others. So fear, the experience of really sort of these extreme emotions. It can be over sexualized. Sort of experience where there's no boundaries. There's this oceanic feeling. And we feel like the child within us is satisfied by perhaps the adult in the other. John Bradshaw discusses this in his book also. But this traumatization is a bond. It's not a relationship. So it creates an attachment or an addiction in the brain where there's these elevated neurochemicals that are flushed into the brain and then the body and create this neurological surge of emotion, the fight or flight response, which essentially the person, the victim, gets addicted to. So as this is perpetuated over and over, the victim, the supply, gets really kind of locked in. They get really sort of enmeshed. They get attached. They get stuck. And their all their relationship, all their emotions, all their focus is kind of pivoting on this person, satisfying them, appeasing them, trying to make them happy, trying to learn more about them, satisfy them in new and interesting ways. It becomes a very deep and indelible bond. And this is entitled basically a trauma bond, which keeps that control mechanism in place where the person, the supply, the victim, whatever name we want to give to this experience here, the codependent, they feel essentially locked in, like they can't get out. They're so controlled by these extreme emotions of fear, of feeling unsafe, that they, fear abandonment. They feel so enmeshed with this person that they almost feel like they can't exist without them. They feel indelibly attached, and a relationship should be healthy and be really defined by boundaries. In other words, what we call individuation or separation. And I know that these are some psychological terms, but I think as you learn these again and again, it will begin to make sense, because trauma bond creates an attachment where essentially you become feeling like you're just part of them and you're not your own person. So this is, this is called attachment. And usually we have an attachment bond early in life where we're attached to our caregivers, but then with healthy parenting, healthy mirroring, and we're taught how to manage our feelings and handle our feelings, and knowing where they begin and end, and we're not just a victim to feelings of fear. We're not victims to a feeling of guilt. We're not victim to feelings of shame. We're taught how to handle these effectively and then, become individuated or become our own person. And John Bradshaw describes this experience also very well in his book, Healing the Shame That Binds You. And I'm just going to review this with you really quick because I think it really is the pinpoint in the foundation of developing a healthy sort of outlook and beginning to life so that you can attract healthy relationships. And you can perhaps see how this is created early in life and then affects really how you attract other relationships and how you manage these relationship dynamics and are basically, happy and healthy moving forward. So John Bradshaw, he describes, how important it is for children to have what he calls echoing and mirroring. So it's giving them that feedback. And it comes really from their primary caregiver's eyes. And mirroring essentially means that someone is there for them and reflects who they really are at any given moment in time. So it's really the role of that parent to help establish who that person is, their identity, their message, who they are in the world very, very early on. Especially in the first 3 years of life, each of us needed to be admired and to be taken very seriously. We needed to be accepted for the very one who we are. And having these mirroring need results in what he refers to, Alice Miller in her work, are calling our basic narcissistic supplies. So in other words, it's okay to have a self, it's okay to be individuated, it's okay to be our own person and not merely just an extension of a parent and their needs and satisfying their needs. And then he furthermore says these supplies result from good mirroring by a parent with good boundaries. In other words, this is where the parent operates, this is where they stop, and this is how they then educate and raise a child. And he further discusses in the drama, as Alice Miller states in her book, The Drama of the Gifted Child, the following dynamics takes place. And this is, again, healthy mirroring in the parent-child relationship, but should also be established and functioning in the spousal relationship or adult relationships moving forward. She states the child's aggressive impulses can be neutralized because they do not threaten the parent. The child striving for autonomy is not experienced as a threat to the parent. The child is allowed to experience and express ordinary impulses, such as jealousy, rage, sexuality, and defiance, because the parents have not disowned these feelings within themselves. Furthermore, the child does not have to please the parent and can develop his or her own needs at his or her own developmental pace. And the child can depend on and use his parents because they are separate from him. The parent's independence and good boundaries allow the child to separate self and object identification, meaning, you're your own person and, you're allowed to navigate freely in your world and not feel guilty or not feel like you're just controlled by your parent, that you can kind of separate, be your own person, in other words, create your own identity, and you're not in trouble for being yourself. And because the child is allowed to display ambivalent feelings, he can learn to regard himself and the caregiver as both good and bad. And furthermore, the beginning of true object love is possible because the parents love the child as a separate object or entity. In essence, so it's that reflective, it's that mirroring, it's that really, it's that creation of who we are. It's acknowledging, accepting, and applauding all the feelings, needs, wishes, desires of that child, and then essentially of that adult moving forward that creates that individuation, which is so missing in a covert narcissist spousal relationship. Oftentimes, I find that the spouses of a covert narcissist often feel ignored, neglected, betrayed, abandoned. Really, it's a neglect of validation or an emotional anorexia. So it's like they're not being heard. They don't have that individuation. They don't have that voice. They don't have that presence. And because that's occurred over time, it's that trauma bond. In other words, it's that attachment versus just having a healthy dynamic in the relationship, which is typified really by what they call individuation or having your own identity. And it sounds very basic, but it can be, once you learn essentially these dynamics and what have occurred, you can create these in your adult self moving forward. So I think it's very important to perhaps play this again and again and realize a couple key concepts. What is a trauma bond in attachment versus true healthy relationship dynamics and being independent, being individualized, being separate from your spouse, and not feeling less than, minimized, or not stuck or attached to them, and that you don't have that sort of impending guilt or shame in the relationship, that you're allowed to speak up and have and hold your own place. Peace and harmony with you here today. I hope these videos do help. Please share and please subscribe for more great tools, videos, discussion, and support.